Hey everyone, and welcome to a new series on our YouTube channel where we're going to be interviewing various thought leaders from around the Salesforce ecosystem. So make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date with everything Salesforce. Today we're joined by Steph Herrera, who is an absolute legend around the Salesforce ecosystem. Is involved in various initiatives of giving back, and that's what's the focus of the interview is going to be focused on today. So let's dive in. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, Steph, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you, Ben. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Herrera, and I am the founder of Salesforce Saturdays, co-founder of Pep Up Tech, which was started by Selena Suarez back at the end of 2016. And Pep Up Tech basically helps minorities and underrepresented communities learn Salesforce, get access to our networks, and get jobs. I'm also a board member for Merivis, which was founded by Hector and Kate Perez and Joe Castro, and that was started in 2015. I started volunteering with them in 2015, and it's just like Pep Up Tech, but it's for veterans and their spouses. So in 2015, Hector Perez came to me and asked me to speak to their very first cohort of veterans that went through the program, and it had people like Sheldon Simmons was in that first cohort. We all know Sheldon. And so that was my first experience with them. And then in 2017, I became a board member of Merivis, and I still am. And so, yeah, Pep Up Tech, Salesforce Saturdays, and Merivis. So those are the three programs that I'm very, deeply passionate about and still very involved with today. And they all need mentors and coaches for all of you out there that are interested.
Nice. So everyone check them out.
Yes, please.
Well, hello, Steph, and welcome to a Salesforce Ben interview. How's it going?
Good. So far, so good. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. How's your trip to Europe been so far?
It's been nonstop. I landed here and then almost had French touch streaming almost immediately, and then had the Architect User Group yesterday and Ohana dinner, and now here, and then tomorrow night we have the Mega Meet, and it's just like nonstop. It always is like. Yes, when I come here, it's always nonstop. So but I love it. I love it.
Great, cool. Well, yeah, great to have you in London. So Steph, a lot of people probably know your name and your face, and obviously you've done so much in the ecosystem. But could you give us a slight background of your career and kind of some of the points that led you up to a career in the Salesforce ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got 23 years in tech, actually. I started my career in tech back at Dell Computers in Round Rock, Texas, right outside of Austin. I was just 10 years old when I started. I wish. I was definitely in my early 20s and didn't realize at the time what a great opportunity it was. When I got on at Dell, I went into sales. At the time, the Dell stock was splitting left and right, and people were trying to get on there. It was creating what they called Dellionaires, so everyone was trying to get there. I started on as a temp doing sales. They put us through an intensive 3-week training program every single day, and we were tested on sales knowledge, product knowledge, and how to navigate their DOS-based system. I was really, you talking about imposter syndrome, I didn't know what it was at the time. But yeah, there were like 20 other people in the class. Most of them had college degrees. One guy had quit his job at NASA to work at Dell. And so I really felt like I was out of my element, but every single day that they tested us, I always finished in the top 3. And I've realized, oh my goodness, I might actually be good at this. And so at the end of the training program, they tested us, and everybody stayed after to study. And I was so afraid that I was going to be found out that I didn't belong. I went home and curled up in a ball, and was just full of anxiety and didn't even study. Then the next day we took the test, and as the environment in that particular sales environment was very competitive, so they always let everybody know their scores. And I finished second highest in the class, got a 96. I was so proud. But everybody in the class turned on me, and they were like, you were the only person who didn't stay after and study with us to help share your knowledge. And that stuck with me for the rest of my career, and they were absolutely right. I should have stayed and studied with them, and who knows, maybe I would have got the top grade. That's the competitive nature of me. But that started my career at Dell in sales. I did home sales, small business sales. And then from there, I went and worked in the order processing side of the business to learn, about how the orders are processed and where the money comes from. And that's where I really learned the operational side of tech. And then I also worked in state and local government. I was an executive admin. So I really got to wear many different hats at Dell. I was there for almost 9 years. And as Dell grew, so did Austin, and there were more startups coming to Austin, and everybody was like, you need to go work for a startup. That's really where it's at. So that's what I did. I left Dell after 9 years and went to work for a small startup, found the ad for it on Craigslist. They're paying $20 an hour to work with a sales team. Basically, I worked with the president of business development and did all the operational stuff for the sales team. He had just set up Salesforce. I'd never heard of it before. He's like, hey, I just set this up. I want you to own it. I want you to figure it out, and you're going to manage it for the sales team. And I went in and started playing with it, and I was like, oh my God, I fell in love with it. When I was at Dell in sales, all I had was a Excel spreadsheet to keep up with everything. And I did. I had one of the highest close rates at Dell because I kept up with everything on an Excel spreadsheet. And so when I saw Salesforce, I was like, oh, this would have made my life so much easier, and I would have made so much more money had I had Salesforce to use as a sales rep. So I jumped in with both feet, loved it, continued to learn the platform as I worked for a couple of different startups. And then in late 2007, 2008, the startup I was with was going under. No, actually, it was 2007 is when I started. But so it was 2010 whenever it was starting to go under. And so I had to go find something else to do. I was going to go back to Dell, but they were doing all sorts of layoffs. So my only other option with my experience was Apple computers. And at that time, Dell and Apple were huge competitors. But it was really my only choice. And I thought I was going to catch on fire when I walked into the Apple offices, but it was a great experience. I worked there for a year and a half while Steve Jobs was still at the helm, and I learned a lot about operations at Apple as well. But I got to where I missed the Salesforce platform. Full disclosure, Apple does not pay well. And I needed more than just the brand name that doesn't pay the bills, and I really missed the Salesforce platform. So I updated my resume, and within 2 weeks, I had 3 different job offers, each of them offering more than I was making, like a 50% pay increase over what I was making at Apple. So I took the one that paid the most and started doing Salesforce full time. That was in 2012, and haven't looked back since then. So I've been working in the Salesforce ecosystem full time since 2012. I've worked on 8 different Salesforce instances, 4 of which I owned, which means the buck stopped with me. I worked with the C-suite. I hired and developed the teams. I drove the roadmap. I decided which technologies would integrate with our Salesforce system. And then in 2019, I decided to go into the recruitment side because I was building a lot of communities and wanted to see how I could use that world to try and get jobs for my different communities, as like Salesforce Saturday, Pep Up Tech, Merivis, and learn that side of the business to further be able to help them get jobs and see what that was like. And then in October of 2021, right? Yeah. I went out on my own. And so I've been on my own since then, but I've since learned that I don't do well on my own. I need teams. I'm driven by others, which is why I started Salesforce Saturday. I'm not self-driven. I need to be part of a team, and I need to be out there developing people. So that's where I'm at now. I'm in the process of finding my next venture, and hopefully by the time this comes up, I'll know where that's at after I have discussions. And part of it is something that will allow me to be here in London more because I love this. I love this part of the world. I love this part of the world. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. And I think there's a lot of things in that story that have maybe hinted towards the paths that you've chosen to move into in the future. So you mentioned a few of your ventures and some of your work that you've been doing, but I think one thing that not a lot of people can say is that you were on stage with Mark Benioff at Dreamforce. What was it? 2017.
So long ago now.
Yeah, it's like that is pretty. That must have been a pretty crazy experience. But what kind of the initiatives that you focus on? I'd love to kind of focus on all of them really. But what was it that led you to be on stage with Mark Benioff?
So that came about, I think at that time, a lot of people, especially newer to the ecosystem, may not realize this. Prior to 2017, at Dreamforce, they always highlighted companies, like Burberry or, NBC Studios. It was always different C-suite that was on stage with Mark. They always highlighted companies that were using their platform. And then in 2017, Mark himself decided he wanted to highlight an individual Trailblazer. So he put a call out to Salesforce employees to find that Trailblazer. So at the time, I didn't know this. I just know that someone reached out to me. Bo Bouverall reached out to me to talk to me about my story. And he called me, we had a conversation, and I told him about Salesforce Saturday, my work with Pep Up Tech and Merivis. And he was like, okay, well, we might be in touch again. And he called me back the next day. He's like, we want to highlight you and your story. and come to Austin and film you. And which just kind of blew me away. And I was just like, okay, but you're just going to come film me. He's like, yeah. It's like, that sounds really boring to me. I don't think anybody wants to just watch me on the screen. I said, if you're going to come out here, you need to film my Austin Salesforce Saturday community, which you'll also see Merivis cohorts there as well, and my Women in Tech, because I was also leading the Women in Tech chapters. They're like, well, I don't know. We don't know if we have enough budget for that, but we'll see. And so they showed up on my doorstep. It was supposed to be 5 of them, and I opened up my door, and there's like 20 people out there, this big film truck, and they're setting up tables for them to all eat breakfast tacos. And I was just like, what is going on? I didn't warn my neighbors of this. They're like, well, we got more budget, and we're gonna film your Salesforce Saturday. We're gonna do all of that. And yeah, so they did. And I just remember thinking that, not really trusting him. I was like, oh God, please don't let this be cheesy. But by the end of the weekend, I was in love with him and his team. They did a great job with our community. And then I got on a plane to India and didn't really think anything about it. I went to the India Dreaming inaugural event and got on the plane and went there and didn't think anything about it. And then Dreamforce rolls around, and I've got people reaching out to me who had seen the film. I didn't even get to see the film. And I was getting ready to go to Dreamforce, and the marketing team reached out to me the Friday right before Dreamforce and said, we need to have a conversation with you this afternoon. Are you free at 4? I was like, yeah, sure. They're like, are you sitting down? I was like, yeah, I'm sitting down. They're like, Mark's going to feature your film at the keynote, and he will be bringing you up on stage and talking to you. And I was just like, what in the world is happening right now? I was supposed to catch my plane to San Francisco at 7 a.m. the next morning. And especially at that time, I was a jeans and t-shirts kind of gal. I didn't have anything nice to wear to be on the stage for the keynote. So as soon as I landed in San Francisco that Saturday, I had to go find something to wear. And then on Sunday, they showed me the actual film. And then on Monday, I was on stage with Mark. And at the time, his team, I was like, what's he going to ask me? Like, we don't know. He doesn't tell us. We can't tell you what he's going to ask you. So I'm the kind of person that likes to be really prepared. So that really had me filled with anxiety. I was like, oh my God. And like I said, nobody had been on stage with him before. And so I was, needless to say, I was a nervous wreck.
You didn't come across and
Really?
you call across professional. And I was thinking, I would be a nervous detective if I was in your position.
I was. I'd gathered myself, and as he was walking around and talking, he like made eye contact with me and winked, and then it all fell apart. I was like, oh my God. He just like lost my cool. I was like, so much for like having myself together. But yeah, that's how it happened. It's still like, yeah, it's crazy to me.
So was Salesforce Saturday, so a big part of this interview is going to be talking about giving back to the Salesforce community. And when I thought about doing something like this, you're the first person that pops to mind. And so was Salesforce Saturdays kind of the first initiative that you...
No, actually it was not. It was not. So the very first initiative, so like I said, now I've got 23 years in tech, but at the time when I started in the Salesforce ecosystem and full-time in 2012, I'd already worked for Dell for 9 years. I worked for Apple for almost 2 years. And so I'd always been part of teams, whether it be sales, operations, and, especially at Dell, I saw firsthand how working on a team can ramp you up and make you successful a lot faster. And whenever I became Salesforce admin, I was this solo admin for the team, the companies that I worked for. So everybody came to me. I was supposed to be the expert, and I didn't have anybody to turn to ask questions of. And I was really looking for that. Another thing that was great about Dell and made it really progressive is there were male and female leaders for me to learn from. So I had great male mentors and also had great female mentors. Like it was K-12, which overtook Apple at the time, was almost completely led by women sales leaders. So I got to learn from them, and I saw how important it was to have that development. And then whenever I became an admin in the Salesforce ecosystem, that was missing. Even at the startups, it was all driven by men. Again, great mentors, but there weren't any females for me to turn to. And having worked at Dell and seeing how that impacted me, I knew how important it was. So I was seeking that out. And then I went to Dreamforce in 2012, and I saw on the schedule this thing called Girly Geeks that was meeting. And I was like, that sounds interesting. I'm going to go to that. And I had gone to Dreamforce with my sales director, and we were meeting our sales AE, who was also male. They're like, where you go to a sports bar and hang out? I was like, I'll meet y'all later. I'm going to go to this Girly Geeks thing. And so I walk in, and there are 400 women all meeting and talking about Salesforce at Dreamforce in a room. And on stage were 5 women who were leaders and talking about their careers. This was started by Geraldine Gray. And when I walked in, I felt, I'm not going on Mary Tyler Moore or not, but I felt like her when she throws her hat up in the air and twirls around. I was like, oh my God, I found the women that I've been looking for. There's this many women who do Salesforce. I didn't know that. And I ate it up. I loved it. And so, but the rest of the week at Dreamforce was great. But then I had to go back home to Austin. And then I went back home to Austin and I was missing that. I was like, this is what I've been looking for. And so I reached out to Salesforce MVP in Austin and asked her, I ran into her at an event, Kyla Longi, and I asked her, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to do like a Salesforce, almost sound like an AA meeting, a support group. I want to do, but for Salesforce support group, that's something like that is successful and it's proven to help people. I said, but the Girly Geeks, like what they do yearly, I want to do monthly in Austin and do it at a restaurant, have a happy hour. We as women can come together monthly and help each other technically, answer each other's questions. And I said, I was lucky that my company sent me there. I mean, I'd been in tech for a long time. I'd never got any professional development ever. So that was the first time I'd ever been sent anywhere. And so I recognized how lucky I was that that company, Renew Data, who I worked for at the time, paid to send me there because I couldn't have gone on my own dime. I was living paycheck to paycheck. And so I was like, it'd be great if we can bring this back at the local level because there are a lot of women that don't get sent to Dreamforce but still need this development. And I'd like to start that here in Austin and hopefully we can do it all over the country. And so that we can have, these girly geeks everywhere and have somebody lead it and, have women lead it. And so she got in touch with Geraldine Gray and we asked her, can we do this? Can we use the Girly Geeks name because it's already known? And, there were like almost 400 women at Dreamforce. So that's a large number. And these women can go back and start them in their hometowns. And she let us. So we called it Girly Geeks. The first year was called Girly Geeks. And I kicked off the very first one in Austin, Texas on January 27th of 2014. And I was very lucky. And so I just went on LinkedIn and I found every woman in Austin that had Salesforce in their just description or in their summaries. And I invited them to the Austin meetup. And 17 women I didn't know showed up. And it was like, wow, I didn't know this many women in Austin were there. Only 2 people invited. There were actually people that I knew that I worked with at Apple and one girl I went to high school with. But everybody else I didn't know. They showed up and I told her why I was starting this. And I got really lucky. Mary Scotton was in attendance at the time. And she was running Developer Evangelist Group at Salesforce. They were in town to do a meetup the next day. And so she was there and saw me sharing why I started the chapters and the reason behind it. And I'll never forget, she gave me so much confidence. She came up to me and she's like, you're the linchpin. You're the linchpin. And I had just, been watching Blacklist and they were talking about the linchpin. So I thought that was really cool. But she was like, this is really great what you've done. And so, my goal was for it to just, at the time, the Salesforce platform did so much to me. I wanted to make sure I was able to retire with it. And I recognized that there weren't enough people who knew how to do this. And so I was going to do what I could to make Austin the strongest community for Salesforce and level up Austin. And that was my main goal at the time of starting the Girly Geek chapters. And now there are women in tech that's now called Salesforce Women in Tech, and it's all over the world. And the great thing about it is that each group has 2 female leaders. And so it started creating female leaders. And I remember Erica Cole talking about it at the Salesforce MVP, at the MVP Summit in 2016 about how the WIT chapters, now they have more female MVPs because they are leading these groups. So that was the very first initiative I started. And a lot of people don't know that. But that's what led to Salesforce Saturday because the guys in my Austin community were pinging me like, well, that's not fair. We want to learn too. We want to meet monthly like this. We think that's cool. And I was like, okay, first of all, the world is creative for you guys. Y'all have a lot of groups to do this. But I hear you. So then the next year, 2015, and at the time also I was managing teams. I was no longer in the weeds. So I was wanting to freshen up my technical skills and get my Dev 401 certification, really dating myself right now, because that no longer exists. So I just let everybody know that I was going to be at the Starbucks and anybody who wanted to meet up with me could meet up with me and we could study together. So I kicked that off in March of 2015. Nyla Shawnee, who I'd met at Dreamforce the year before, showed up and she was like, I can still see her running up and she's like, I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm like, I'm just so happy you're here and I'm not by myself. And so she and I studied. She studied for her Admin 201 and I studied for my Dev 401. And then the next meetup, there were about 4 or 5 people that showed up. And that first year, it just more and more showed up till there were like 18 or 20 showing up every Salesforce Saturday, and you'd have your poor PhD. That was just in Austin. And then during that time, Jessica Murphy and Rachel Watson in Phoenix reached out and asked if they could do their own chapter. And I was like, absolutely. So I'm very grateful to them because of them, it became a global movement. But a lot of that credibility goes to Tammy Eastling, who was in the Salesforce Austin community and had become a really good friend of mine. I called her my Salesforce soul sister. We did all the events together, and she was the one that when I was doing Salesforce Saturday, she was the one that told me to socialize it on Twitter. And, I was on Twitter, but I wasn't active. And I was like, no, that's too much work, and I don't want to be on Twitter. And so she would nag me every Saturday. She's like, I didn't see a post on Twitter. Where's your post? You need to share this. What you're doing is a big deal, and other people need to know about it so they can do it too. So then I started taking pictures, and what I noticed at Salesforce Saturdays in Austin was how diverse it was, the people showing up and continuing to come back. It was old and young. It was all different colors, different religious backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds. And to me, I wanted to show that tech could look different. In Austin, it did look different. It wasn't the stereotype that had been put out there. So I took pictures, and I would do it with just my eyes because I've got these chipmunk cheeks, and so I don't like them, so I cut it off mainly, and then that way I could get them in, and that ended up becoming it. Yeah, so I was like, I didn't really want to be in the picture, but I had to, so I was like, okay, I'll just see my eyes only, and I'll get everybody else in it. And so I started putting those on Twitter, and that's how Jessica and Rachel found out about Salesforce Saturday.
So how many, you probably don't know for sure, but how many chapters are there roughly?
About 60 globally. Yep, yeah. Oh, yeah, there's like 5 in the Netherlands, and then, there's one here in London now. There was one in Dubai. There were like 5 in India. There's one there. Japan has like 3. Yeah, it just really took off, which to me shows that it was an unexpected. Again, my goal was Austin, was to make Austin so that I would have a retirement plan. I didn't want it because I could see that there's not enough people that know how to do this, and that there are not enough people this to go away, and I don't want it to go away. And yeah, because it changed my life.
Yeah, that's an amazing story to hear. And I'm sure the Salesforce ecosystem, I think overall in terms of giving back, is probably at a pretty good level, maybe compared to other tech ecosystems. I don't know for sure. And I think there's probably an attitude of deep down in everyone that they want to give back because they've been helped by so many other people. They've been to Salesforce Saturdays, they've been to user camps, they've been on the Trailblazer community. There's so many, so much availability for people to be helped by others, with the ecosystem that Salesforce have created. But what gave you your motivation originally for wanting to give back, wanting to spend your free time giving back to the tech community?
So it's probably there are 3 things in my life overall. It's in starting young. Growing up, I'm one of 4 children. My parents, they had me young, and they didn't have the tools necessarily to really thrive and survive in the world. So we went without a lot. We didn't have a lot of money, and there were many Christmases where we didn't get gifts, and we understood that there wasn't money for that. We had to pay the bills, and oftentimes there wasn't enough money for the bills. And I remember in the 6th grade, we lived up in Jeffersonville, Indiana, and it was Christmas time, and it was snowing, and we hadn't paid our heat, so we had no heat, and my sister and I were really sick from it. And we knew there wasn't going to be Christmas. And I remember a knock on the door. We lived in a trailer. And I remember a knock on the door, and there were these 2 women standing there. And they had Christmas gifts for us. And my sister and I each got a Strawberry Shortcake doll, and my brother's got a He-Man action figure. And I remember, and I can still vividly see them standing in our doorway. And I remember thinking, these people don't know us. Why are they doing this for us? And just being so happy that I had a gift for Christmas. And that feeling and that being in awe of strangers doing something nice for me and my family has never left me. And the desire at that time to be able to do that for somebody else. So that has always stayed with me. And then the second would be my paternal grandparents. Both my parents were young when they had me. They were 16. And so my paternal grandparents stepped in and became like my parental figures in my life. And, my grandfather, he was in the, in the Army, military. He served in the Korean War, and he was in the Army and Marines. But when he came back after serving for our country, there weren't a lot of options for him, especially as a Hispanic man in West Texas. So he did a lot of physical labor, construction, roofing. Same with my grandmother, a Hispanic woman in West Texas. She was a caretaker and a housekeeper. And so they didn't have a lot, and they had very physical jobs. But what they did have, they always shared with others, to a fault, almost like if, there was a saying in our family, if they had two of something and you needed one, they gave it to you. If they had one of something and they felt like you needed it more than they did, they gave it to you. So I was raised around that spirit of helping their neighbors and their family. And so I saw that firsthand from them. And my grandfather and his service in the military is the main reason that I volunteer for Merivis, because he didn't have opportunity and access. And though I wasn't able to help him, but hopefully Merivis can help somebody else's grandfather or father or brother or sister or grandmother or through their programs. So that is, they were the reason that, they were a second reason of why I give back. They set the example for me. And then as far as the third influence would be as I went through my career in tech, I had my daughter young. I was a teen statistic. I had her, I got pregnant when I was 16, had her when I was 17. And even though I did very well in school, straight A student, honor roll, National Honor Society secretary. Back then Google didn't exist, and I didn't know how to find the resources. I got into college, but we lived in rural West Texas. There was no train or bus station for me to hop on and get me into town. I had to have a car, and my mom was a nurse, and she was working all the time, worked doubles, and had to wait for her to get home. And sometimes she didn't get home on time, so I couldn't get to school. So I did a semester in college and had to drop out because I wasn't able to get there, and just focused on work and went straight to work. And most times I had to bum a ride to work. Either my grandfather or my mom or a friend would give me a ride to work back and forth because I just couldn't afford it. And so I stumbled into tech by accident. We moved out to Round Rock, and my husband at the time got a job there, and he pushed me to interview at Dell. I didn't want to, but he's like, "You're really good with people and you're really good at sales. You should explore it." So I did. And, from the moment I started at Dell, I had somebody offering to help me. Like, they could see, like, my first day at Dell in the training class, I didn't even know how to turn the computers on. Like, there was people now might not know, but there was a computer, then there was a chassis. And I didn't know which button to turn on. And the guy sitting next to me, Travis Hendricks, and we're still friends to this day, he could see the fear in my eyes of, like, I don't know what to do here. And he showed me how to do it. And he showed me the different tech, he showed me how to navigate the system. It was just really helpful. And so many people at Dell were helpful that, that saw something in me and gave me advice and, helped me ramp up even faster. And that continued in the Salesforce ecosystem. Like I said, Mary Scotton, she saw what I did, and she made introductions, at Dreamforce. She opened doors for me that I didn't know existed. I'm the kind of person that, like, if I know there's an opportunity there, I'm gonna do my best to, walk through those doors. But there were doors I didn't know about that she did, and she made sure that I walked through them and made introductions. And then there was, David Franklin in Austin. He did the same. Like, he saw something in me, and back in 2012, he was, 2012 and 2013, he was making introductions for me. He was a true ally before it became a buzzword. He was doing that for me. And then when I was working in the Salesforce ecosystem, one of my second jobs as a Salesforce admin, Neil Garrett, he was my manager. And he also saw something in me. He took me to all of his meetings with him. And he was just like, I just want you to observe. I'm going to tell them you're here to take notes, but I just want you to observe and learn. So I got to watch him interact with the C-suite and see how he spoke to them. And it made it a lot less scary for me. And he made me manager. Like, he's like, I want you to own the instance. And it's like, I don't want to do that. It's like, I like being an individual contributor. I like knowing the work that I'm doing. And my boyfriend was like, "You said Neil's the best manager you ever had. Why not learn from him?" So I did. And, 3 months later, he left to go be a VP somewhere else. I was like, "You're leaving me high and dry." And he's like, "No, you're ready." He goes, "Because you can own this instance, I can finally leave." But I've had mentorship like that along the way of people taking a special interest in me. When I just wanted to be heads down and working, they were like, no, like they forced me to like look around and explore other options that I never would have considered for myself. So I had people in my career like them who helped along the way. And then another one was like Christina Jones, who is at Salesforce now. She's done the same thing for Pep Up Tech and made introductions. Like when I first came to London in 2019 and was at London World Tour, I had people who knew who I was because she made a special introduction saying Stephanie's going to be here. And, just people like that, opening doors for other people. Like I know what that did for me. And so I like to do that for others. And like one of the things I like to say is I like to make the invisible visible. Like I love being able to do that. I like to make the invisible visible because somebody did that for me because I was invisible until they shined a light on me for whatever reason they wanted to. I'd still be happy being an individual contributor, heads down in Austin and doing my thing. Sometimes you don't think big enough for yourself, but other people do. So I know what it did for me. And I know there are a lot of people out there who work really hard and don't have the opportunity. So I get to do that with people like Selena Suarez, a co-founder, founder of Pep Up Tech, Kate and Hector Perez, the founders of Merivis. I get to be a part of their organizations, and I like to say we scale our luck and share that with other people through different groups within the community.
Yeah, amazing. And I think your experiences are having from your life having such a knock-on effect to the whole of the Salesforce ecosystem, because I'm sure all these Salesforce Saturdays chapters, these people who are coming along for free and looking at the leader of that chapter is probably looking at that person going, I'd love to give back the exact same way this person does. So the amount of influence it's giving out is amazing to see.
It's been great to see.
Yeah, so very, very cool. And it's also that kind of positive reinforcement, right? The more people are doing for others completely randomly with no expectation kind of also makes those people feel like they should be getting back later in their careers when they have an opportunity.
Yes, and getting up on a Saturday. I didn't think there was anybody else out there crazy enough to get up on a Saturday to learn Salesforce. It was just the only time I had free. And so, but there were plenty of people who did. Even the plants are excited.
The crazy, no one's going to be crazy.
Oh yeah, I didn't think anybody would be crazy enough to get up on a Saturday and learn Salesforce, but it's all over the world, and I think it's a testament to people want to give back and people want to help. Sometimes they just need a vehicle to show them how to do it, and that's why, again, over 60 chapters all over the world. And one of the really things that I noticed with Salesforce Saturday that wasn't part of the plan is that you have people that show up on a Saturday and it's all free. We usually meet at a coffee shop. That's by design because, sometimes people don't have enough money to buy lunch or buy drinks, but you can either have breakfast before you come or you can buy coffee or a pastry. There's not the pressure to spend too much money. And you just show up with your laptop, and people show up who already know Salesforce because they just want to help. They want to share their knowledge. And what I saw was people who normally would not raise their hand to lead were becoming leaders just by showing up and sharing their knowledge. And it didn't matter where you were in your career. Like I'd see people who their first time was like last week, and then they come back a second time, and then somebody new walks in the door and they're like, oh, look, I can help you get on the Trailblazer community. I can help, because they're showing them what they just learned the week before.
That's when I first started my blog. It was, I had a kind of 18 months experience, something like that. And so much of it was fresh in my mind. I didn't know everything, but I remember the not understanding object relationships and how I overcame that. So when I came to writing down for other new people, I found it very easy because it was
fresh. Yes, exactly. And that's one thing that I learned actually at Dell when I was on the order processing team. We had a really high attrition rate, and they couldn't keep people. And they had only 3 people training all the new people. And I just remember, like when I first started, like, oh, the trainers are like, they're mean and they're grumpy, and it's just like, you're not going to like them. And when I found out, I was like, they were overworked. People were always leaving. And so no wonder they were grumpy. So I went to my supervisor. I was like, hey, I've got a different idea. Will you let me kind of run our training and try this out? And so what I realized, again, new people have just as much knowledge to share. So anytime when people started, I had them sit with every person on the team. And so that wasn't just on the shoulders of the people who'd been there the longest. they sat with everybody on the team, and it had two benefits. One, you learned, again, the people that were newer, the stuff was fresher, because when you've been doing something a long time, some things become like breathing and you forget about it. Like, you don't actually actively think about breathing, but you're breathing. And the knowledge had become like that. They forget to share that information with the newer people. Whereas the newer people are like, oh yeah, you need to do this and this and this, because they went through it. And so that was one benefit of it. And the second was they found somebody that they clicked with, somebody that they connected with, so that they could ask the questions that they were afraid to. Like, they were intimidated by the more senior people, and they didn't want to ask a question and look stupid. But with someone newer, they didn't feel like they were stupid. They felt safer to ask those questions. So that's what drove the whole Salesforce Saturday model, giving people access to anybody and everybody. Find the person you connect with, and people will ask questions, therefore making them successful faster, and realizing that everybody, no matter what level you're at, has knowledge to share.
Cool. Yeah, thank you very much for that. And so if people do want to give back to the Salesforce ecosystem but don't know where to start, where would you say is, what are some options where people can start giving back right away?
What the user groups, all the different user groups, start attending the user groups in your area. There's a Trailblazer community. I think that's what it's called now. It feels like the links are always changing. But the user group, there's programs like Merivis, Pep Up Tech, Rad Women Who Code, Super Moms, Ladies Be Architects. There's some.
And these are all kind of you can mentor.
You can mentor what used to be Refugee Force, but is now Blue Road Academy. They're always looking for mentors and coaches. That's the hardest thing to get, and that's the most needed resource. So people to mentor and coach. So, and then now that I think Salesforce actually has its own mentoring program that you can volunteer for. So to me, those are the best ways to give back. One, you're sharing your knowledge, and you're also skilling yourself up in the process. But find any of those organizations that, like in Salesforce Saturdays, again, people showing up for free and, sharing their knowledge. And it sharpens your leadership skills. And what's that thing about teachers? Like, when you teach, you learn. It's true. Yeah, it does. It does. And it's a safe space to do it. Like, this person you're mentoring doesn't know if it's right or wrong. So you feel, they're not going to call you out on it, and hopefully they won't. And but those to me are the best ways to give back, mentoring and coaching. There's so many programs out there that are giving freely of their time, and they don't have the resources to pay people to mentor and coach. So those are the best way to help those programs reach the people who need the program the most.
Yeah, great. And you kind of touched on a few benefits as well there. So, obviously you want to be doing this selflessly, giving back and expecting nothing in return. But when you are mentoring, coaching, presenting, these are all skills that you're not going to be great at the first time you do it. No one is. But over time, these are very...
Yeah, it becomes easier and easier. And what I've learned is also, especially, I go to, and I had mentioned Salesforce Saturday because I go to when I'm in Austin, I go to each one that's in person. And what I see is you're learning the buzzwords. You're learning the Salesforce language. You're learning how to talk, not only to the people at Salesforce Saturday, but you're learning how to have those conversations with your stakeholders. Anytime, you get new admins, that's the thing that they're most afraid of, like when they're on the job, is how to talk to their stakeholders. You learn that by going to user groups. You learn that by going to Salesforce Saturdays, by mentoring with these programs. You learn to have those conversations, and it just becomes more and more natural. So you're getting to practice what you need to do with your stakeholders in your everyday job.
Yeah, fantastic. And so moving on to something else now, which is quite, which has been in the news and on Twitter recently, there's been a few kind of tech boot camps that have come to light, which are charging people thousands of dollars and sending them to free Salesforce resources.
Right.
And I suppose they provide some services as well. But, what's your kind of view on if someone wants to learn Salesforce, what resources do they need? And, are these boot camps relevant?
Got it. Yes. So the beautiful thing about Salesforce, there's two things. It's free learning platform, Trailhead. Like, anybody can learn. I love that it levels the playing field. People who don't normally have access, and they have a free resource to learn. The second thing is its community, the Salesforce community, which was created by Erica Cole of Erica Cole Consulting. It was her vision. She started the whole community, and it's basically a world of people what we've been talking about, a world of people who want to give back, who want to share their knowledge. That's what makes Salesforce special. I don't know any other technology that has a free learning resource platform like Trailhead, or as a community of people who want to give back freely. And that's where you should be spending your time and taking advantage of that. Now, I kind of look at the boot camps, the paid boot camps, so like you said, charges thousands of dollars, kind of like college and going to university. If you have the money and the means to do that, knock yourself out because you get access to a great network. If you don't put yourself in debt when there are free resources that you can take advantage of. There's this whole community out there that wants to give back, and they put these resources together. They put on webinars. There's a dreaming events, which were started by Eric Dreschfield, that are regional that you can attend for a much smaller amount. And you're learning this. You're not only are you getting knowledge, but you're meeting people in person. So there's many different ways to go about it. And for me as a hiring manager, I'm going to be looking at LinkedIn and looking at the people who are taking advantage of, who are being resourceful, and that don't necessarily need to be spoon-fed. And that's just me and my personality and what I'm looking at, because this is a really hard job to do. Working in the Salesforce ecosystem is not easy. You've got to be resourceful. You've got to be proactive. The buck stops with you. Salesforce marketing does a great job of like, anybody can do Salesforce, and it's not so easy. It's dry. It's the central nervous system of any business, and it is complex. They do 3 releases a year. There's 400 to 600 pages in these releases. Nobody is an expert in Salesforce. Nobody is a guru. The technology is constantly changing, so you need to learn how to be resourceful and find the different tools out there available to you. So for me as a hiring manager, that's the kind of person I'm looking for. I'm looking for a person who has shown that they're resourceful, who knows how to go get those resources, and who knows to get the most bang out of their butt. That's what I'm looking for, because it is it's a really hard skill set. It's not for everybody. But again, if you've got the resources, knock yourself out. But if you don't put yourself in debt. There's so many free resources. Again, the user groups for veterans and spouses of veterans, Merivis, the Salesforce military program, that's free. I'll be honest, it drives me crazy when I get somebody that is military and they said they pay for a boot camp. You don't have to do that. Salesforce military is Mark Benioff's gift to the military. You don't have to pay for that. And for those who don't have the financial resources to pay for these boot camps, organizations like Pep Up Tech, started by Salesforce, it's free. And we go and get the money from sponsors so that you don't have to pay for it. And then each of those programs like Merivis, Pep Up Tech, Rad Women Who Code, they come with a built-in network that will continue to nurture and develop you after the program's over with. And we give you access and help you get jobs. So there's, again, to each his own, but you don't have to pay to learn Salesforce. Salesforce Saturday, completely free. People show up to help you, and they just want to share their knowledge. So there are free resources. If you don't have the means, utilize the free resources. People really genuinely want to help in this community.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, just off the top of my head, there's Salesforce Pathfinders, which is the Salesforce program. Have you heard of Clicked?
No, I've
Clicked is a separate company, but sponsored by Salesforce, and they offer free training programs on skills like business analyst skills, but linked in with Salesforce. So Clicked is a really cool one to check out as well. Well, Steph, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today, and thank you so much for coming down for the interview. Do you have any final words for anyone listening today?
Well, thank you, Ben, for having me. This has been a lot of fun. I'm really excited that I'm your guinea pig. This is the first one. So I know where you live, so this better be good. But no, it's been great knowing we first met back in 2019, and it's been great. So I felt honored to be the first. So thank you. And you are a perfect example of what this community gives to you. I remember seeing Salesforce Ben and, this is a superhero and not knowing who he was. And then I got to meet you in 2019, and you're a great person, and you're, someone I can call a friend, and who I get to see when I come here to visit. And that's just an example of what the community gives to you. I'm from West Texas, and here I am in London, filming a video with the Salesforce Ben. It doesn't get any better than that. And that's a gift to the community and being involved. And, again, like I said before, I like to make the invisible visible, and finding those people who might not necessarily know about the different opportunities and the different ways that you can do that. Again, through Merivis, Pep Up Tech, Salesforce Saturdays, Rad Women Who Code, Blue Road Academy, super moms, ladies be architects. There's so many different organizations out there that you can give back and mentor and coach. And the things that are so great about that are to me, are the relationships that come from it. People who I didn't know at the time, Mary Scott and set me and Selena Suarez up on a play date at Dreamforce. She was like, meet me in the developer zone. And she introduced us to each other and said, I think you two will get along, now go. And we did. And then, a few months later, she asked me to help her with Pep Up Tech. Same with Hector. I ran into him at an event in Austin, and he asked me to speak at the cohort. And he's like a brother to me, and Kate's like a sister to me. And, that happens, when you find like-minded people. Because it's not easy. You're giving up your time, but what you get back in return is just so much greater with the different relationships, the different experiences. I'd love for seeing more people, out in the U.S. coming out here to London. There's a great community out here. I'm going to Amsterdam next week to see Sergey and Gasper and Seema. And again, it's people who I'm very close to. Gasper Rodriguez, actually, I found out the last time I was in London, he's from Houston, Texas. How do you know that? He's Texan, just like me. And we took a picture. I was like, we actually look like we could be siblings. We might need to have a talk with our parents. Wait, yeah. So yes, that to me is the greatest thing that you can get from this community. So, volunteer your time, find these organizations. You're going to meet amazing people, and you don't know where it'll lead you to next.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant sign off, and I completely agree. I have so many people, yourself included, Steph, in the Salesforce community that I genuinely consider my friends, and not people I used to work with, and people I still work with. So yeah, thank you very much for being.
Thank you for having me.
We've interacted soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.